Welcome back to the next episode of the Mass Business Podcast. I am your esteemed host, Matt Ward. Yes, that's right. Everybody else has given me that moniker, esteemed host. I have no idea what that means, but nonetheless, I'm here with you today, and I've got an awesome guest. Before I jump into that, don't forget to always check out the show notes for a link to my new book, The High Five Effect: How to Do Business with People Who Bring You Joy. I wrote this in October. It was released in October of 2021. I didn't write it in October of 2021. I wrote it through the pandemic. So I interviewed 50 small business owners in that book, and we talk about all the mistakes that they made, the red flag warnings of taking on bad clients, and how to get good clients and do business with people who bring you joy, which is what I'm all about, which is why I've got a great guest for today's show. Our guest was named the top 100 professional of 2020. Dr. Allessandria Polizzi has 20 years of experience leading teams across multiple industries to unlock the potential in people and help organizations thrive. Following recovery from burnout and depression diagnosis in 2021, Dr. Polizzi rebooted her consulting practice, Verdant Consulting, with a renewed focus on implementing the latest scientific resiliency, burnout prevention, and psychological safety research to help people, teams, and organizations learn practical, simple skills that will help them flourish. Something you're going to love about Dr. Polizzi is she is a board game convention expert. She knows everything there is about the most oddest board games out there. And so you'll have to reach out to her and talk to her about board games if you're a fan as well. I'm so excited to bring her to you on this episode. Let's get to it. Are you ready? Let's go.
High five the world. I'm feeling all right. High five the world. Yeah.
Welcome to the Mass Business Podcast, where small business owners, also known as risk takers, share their stories about the growth of their business and themselves. Our interviews and our content is focused on growing a small business and understanding networking and referrals. I say it all the time, and I'll say it again today. You never know where your next referral will come from. Hey, Doctor, what's going on? Thanks for coming on the show.
Hey, Matt. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. Well, listen, in a quick 30 seconds or less, just simplify what I gave in your intro. Tell the audience listening on the podcast platform or watching on YouTube what it is you actually do.
Happy to do that. Yeah. I offer training on resiliency skills, emotional agility, burnout prevention, and psychological safety. And it's based on the latest in research on neuroscience and cognitive behavior theory. So in other words, I provide training that helps people manage their emotions in a business context so they can decrease their stress and navigate challenges.
Got it. Okay, good. Now that we got that fluffy stuff out of the way, let's talk about building a business. Now, we're obviously we're not here to explain all the strategies around burnout, but burnout is a big issue in small business. And it sounds like it was a big issue in your small business.
Yes, absolutely. Well, it was a big issue for me as an executive in a large business, a medium to large size business. So when I experienced burnout, I was head of HR for a 9,000 person organization across 23 states that runs veterinary hospitals in 450 locations. And it's classic of when you try to do something that's not your strengths, you're basically running in first gear with your pedal to the metal. And that resulted in me experiencing burnout. And I knew it was a problem when I found out my mom and my husband were having meetings about my mental health without me. I was like, oh, this might be worse than I thought.
Wow. Okay. So let's go back. When did you start your business? Your own business?
My consulting practice I actually started in 2016 when I was displaced as the head of learning and leadership development for 7-Eleven. And I went out, just kind of put up it just came by demand. People started asking me, will you consult? And I thought, I guess I could try it. And I did, doing change management and kind of more traditional HR consulting. I did not love it. I hated working by myself. I did not, for a depressive, the up and down of the whole selling cycle was just, it was too much for me. And so I decided that I needed to go back to the more traditional career. And that's what actually moved us to Boston, was I came here to work for Boston Beer Company.
Oh, Sam Adams?
Yes, Sam Adams, Angry
Oh,
Orchard, Truly, Twisted Tea. Yes, all of those.
got
Yeah.
it, got it, got it. Okay, cool. And so, let's talk a little bit about the growth of your company, right? What are the things that you think you've done right in growing your company?
Matt, the big epiphany for me was when I realized that what I had been doing back in 2016 was about running a business as other people ran businesses, and it wasn't running it as myself. And so the thing that's uniquely different about me is I'm an educator. I've been in education since the 90s, 91, 1990. And so I've been teaching adults topics, everything from English as a second language to how to use SAP systems for 30 years. And instead of me leaning in on that and making that my business, I went into this more like consulting opinion space, which for me wasn't really a good fit. What I wanted was a product. And so I've gone from being a consultant to being an offer of a product and a program.
Where did that epiphany come, though? Like, where did you, because did you just wake up one day and go, why am I running this company like everybody else thinks I should run it? Or,
Yes.
what? Yeah?
Yeah. No, I had a big birthday this year. And so, you do a lot of, and I literally got the papers to depart from my corporate position the day before that birthday. And so I was like, okay, this is like bad writing, right? Like you don't like, there's just too much stuff aligning to say, I need to revisit what I'm doing with my life. And so I did a lot of introspection, especially when you're going through depression and burnout recovery. You do a lot of introspection. And so that was, a point for me to say, what do I bring to the world and how do I want to really be the best version of myself? And that's educating people.
It's interesting you say that. I sort of felt like I discovered more about what my purpose was and what I was doing in life as I sat still. And I had stillness in my life and I had quiet time, whether you think of that as meditation but for me, I wasn't using any of the meditation apps or anything. I was just sort of just sitting still and thinking. And for me, that was where a lot of the breakthrough stuff started to come through.
Yeah.
It just started, my biggest thing was when I started doing less speaking and more consulting during the pandemic, I started to ask myself what I didn't like about the consulting I was doing. And it turned out it had nothing to do with the people or the meetings. It literally had to do with blocking my calendar. And it was like looking 3 or 4 weeks out and seeing it all blocked up. I did not like that. And so I figured out a solution, which is I just book the meetings a week out. I don't book them. Like I don't have a ton of recurring calendar appointments that happen with clients and such every week for ongoing basis. And that has solved that problem for me.
Isn't that funny how something so simple could be so life-changing? I mean, what part of my reflection, I teach mindfulness, but I'm not a meditator because I am too much of a doer and I'm always thinking. So I actually teach a class called Messy Mindfulness because for people like me who are like too much of a hot mess to focus for more than 30 seconds. And so, but just listening to yourself and doing that introspection, it's one of the things I actually teach in my class, which is let's go back to my values. Let's go back to my goals. What is it that I want to achieve and who do I want to be? And that's where that really starts to blossom and come forward.
Yeah, really good stuff. So the differences between your business now and your business before, obviously you went back and worked corporate in the meantime, but I would imagine you've been doing a lot of comparing.
Oh, yeah.
What was it like before type of thing in your brain versus what do you want it to be like now?
Yeah. So before it was all just me in the world, me and my opinion, me and my, experience, etc. That's
Mm-hmm.
what consulting is.
Mm-hmm.
Now I'm a product developer. And so that means I'm researching and I'm reading. I'm scientific studies. I am culminating this data and then articulating it so that average people can learn from it in a pragmatic way.
Mm-hmm.
Because to me, what I'm doing, as opposed to before, I was just kind of like out there in the world. Now I'm solving a problem that I experienced. So it's a lot more personal. It's a lot more product development and offerings and that whole, process. Before it was just me.
Mm-hmm. What do you like or not like about this part of this shift into a different focus and a different business setup for you this time around?
Oh, there's nothing that I would go back to with the old way, to be honest, because what I've
Mm.
done is focus on what's important to me versus others. And I would never go back to that now.
How did you get there, though, Alessandra? How did you get to what's important to me? Because I think that's a very important statement that a lot of these small business owners listening need to comprehend, interpret, and figure out. How did you
Yeah.
get to that?
Because one, if I did everybody else's stuff, I'd never have time to get to what's important to me, right? Because everyone has their opinion of how you should run your business. Oh, do it this way, da da da. And it's exhausting and
Yeah.
overwhelming. So I really focus on listening to what feels right to me. And so how that played out for me, Matt, was my gift to myself for my birthday was 3 months of doing whatever I wanted. And so I was like, if I felt like getting up at 3 in the morning and reading about the latest on burnout prevention and that's what I was doing, I did that for 3 months.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where things I started to see, when untethered, where do I have flow, right? Where am I leaning into my strengths? What is energizing me? I find myself now excited to wake up in the morning to get back to work and do the things that I do. So
Because it's not work, right?
it is, but it is, like I don't shame myself. Well, one, I'm practicing the things I teach. So self-compassion and acceptance are the things that I teach. I teach those, I call it the YMCA, the mindfulness, compassion, and acceptance. So if I practice those things, then it helps propel me forward. And this is how I'm wired. And so I'm going to lean into how I'm wired as opposed to trying to shove myself back into a box I just don't fit in.
Yeah, it's interesting because somebody recently said to me, it sounds like you figured out what is most important to you, Matt, which is freedom, doing what I want, when I want, where I want, and how I want. And I said, well, yeah, and I have, but on the other hand, it looks good on the surface. Like you say, I've got it figured out. But like, I've been quite the crapshoot for years. Like, it's window dressing in a lot of ways that I had my crap together and I didn't really have it all together, And so I think it's just a process, and we as small business owners need to be patient with that process. But we also have to do the work necessary for that introspective look on what it is we truly want.
Mm-hmm.
And that's tough work.
It absolutely is. And it's not a one and done. Right. So I teach this resiliency model, which, a PhD in 5 months came up with stop, drop, and roll. I know 5 months, and that's the best I had. But actually, that's like my 5th version.
Isn't that like trademark for the fire department?
But it's perfect because if you think about stress as being on fire and you're afraid of burning out, right?
Yeah.
When you're on fire on the inside, what I teach is you stop. Okay, what's happening? Why am I feeling this way? Drop, get grounded in my values and goals. What matters right now? And then roll, just move forward, right? So those are the things that to me help me in those moments of questioning, which by the way is daily. It is daily that I go, what the F am I doing? I left an executive position to go and do like what?
Yeah. Well, so it's interesting because when I wrote the high five effect, I pretty much felt like people leave the corporate world for 3 reasons. Because they want more money, more time, and more freedom. And they don't get those 3 things at all.
No.
Not especially for the first 5 years. So that book helps them achieve that because it helps them refocus on those things. I mean, I think ultimately, you know, we're willing to trade the success of money that society has labeled as success for something that is different, something that we can pull the strings on. Which brings me around to my next question, because I think many of our podcast listeners are listening and or watching on our YouTube channel because they're looking for ideas on how to grow and make sales. How do you grow your business? How are you gaining new clients these days?
Well, referrals, networking. I mean, I did an analysis of where my businesses come from, and it is 80% from, probably 95% now that I think about it, because when it was a referral of a referral. So yeah, so it comes from that. The other thing, if you're in Massachusetts, there are grants out there that I've been able to leverage because I'm in the education space, where the state pays for.
These are the Workforce Training Fund Express grants.
Funds. Exactly. Yeah. So for me, I've been pre-approved for Express grants. So if a company is 100 or fewer people, the state will pay for the company to take my course. So I'm basically selling a free program. So that,
which by the way, sometimes is harder to sell.
No joke, my friend. Yeah. No joke. Because what the cost of my program isn't the price, it's the time.
Yeah.
Right. So people wanting to / being able to.
I just had that conversation with a guy 2 days ago who was interested in getting coaching. And I made this, it already sounded like he didn't have the time. And I said, listen, I don't even want you to be thinking about this if you don't have the time to not only spend with me, but also implement.
Mm-hmm.
Because what's the point?
Exactly. But by the way, busyness is one of the flight tactics of the flight stress response, by the way. So I would look into that if that's what your response is.
What do you mean by that?
So there's the 4 trauma responses, stress, I call them stress styles. There's fight, flight, fawn, and freeze. And so flight, of which I am a member, tends to fill up the void with busyness.
Oh, I see. So instead of physically running away from something, they're mentally running away from it by filling their time with other busyness.
Yes, sir.
I gotcha.
That's the one.
So you do a lot of networking. Where, when you go into networking events and things like that, what are you looking for?
I am looking for people, like you said about your book, people who would spark joy to partner with. I don't want to have to convince people that the emotions of their employees are important. Like, I'm done with that. Like, I don't want to be in that space. If you don't think that caring about your employees is important, then we're not going to be a good match. So I go to places where I already know they want what I have, and it's just about making them aware.
Yeah, that's so interesting because, like, I often am in a conversation with new clients when they come on, and I'm talking to them about actually how many clients they need. Because I think many times people have not done the math, and they think that they just need everybody. If they can fog a mirror, that they're a good client. But that's not true at all, and there's a big chapter in my book about ideal client stuff. And I think that people sometimes just need to understand what the true numbers are. Maybe we need 10 clients. Maybe we need 20 clients. Maybe, but we don't need hundreds, if thousands of clients. That's just not what we need.
Well, then you have to scale, and like, who are those people? And one client is not the same as another. The other thing I did was I outsourced sales and marketing. So I found professionals who specialize in it, who get joy from doing it, and I paid them to do that for me.
How successful were you doing that, outsourcing sales and marketing?
It's a lot.
Because I hear a lot that people struggle with that, right?
Look, if I'm obsessed with my sales guy. Like, he is so good at articulating my business. Like, it's very convincing to me. And
Mhm.
so, he's made hundreds of phone calls. There's no way I would have done that. So to me, it lets me test out options that
Mhm.
I would not, I just don't have the time. So I have to prioritize how I spend my time. I mean, I'm not, I'm working, I'm up till 11. I'm up at, I don't even want to say what time I get up.
Mhm.
So like, I mean, I'm going. I'm doing the best I can as one person. And then who has also pulled in her children, her husband, and her mother to help her with her business. So like, I got all the free people I could get. So now I got to figure out how I can get more help. And that seemed like the best investment.
Did the free people work out?
I did have to fire my mother from podcast because she spent 2 days on it, Matt. And I was like, how are you spending 2 days? And then I listened to it. She cut every space out. So the sound
Uh,
I was like, did you listen? It's terrible. So yeah, I've had to fire her from that. Bless her.
oh, that's so ridiculous.
I know. And my husband's an artist, so he does the best he can, but like, he doesn't understand 90% of what I'm talking about.
That's so funny. What do you think your biggest weakness is?
Oh, attention to detail for sure. And too many ideas.
So, I mean, I don't have much attention to detail, and it drives type A people batty because they're like, "Hey, do you have the thing, my bob?" And I'm like, "No, I don't have that thingamajig." And they're like, "No, I called it a thingamabob," and I'm like, "Yeah, it's a thingamajig to me, and I don't have it." And I just am not. To me, done is better than perfect.
That's right.
And I've said that for a long time, and I just feel like attention to detail really just slows down the process.
I mean,
For me, it's just not my thing. I'd rather surround myself with people that can deal with that detail.
exactly. So my mom, not good at the podcast.
Attention to too much detail.
Exactly, is fantastic at QA, right? So I think she almost gets giddy every time she finds a mistake in my class. But that thing has been, and then she's indoctrinated my sister in Nebraska, who is also part of my QA process now.
Wait, you got another free employee?
I do. This is definitely a family business.
Yeah, apparently so. A free family business for some of them.
No, I pay my 15-year-old son in death metal t-shirts for editing my podcast.
And death metal t-shirts.
2 death metal t-shirts. No, 1 death metal t-shirt for every 2 podcasts.
Oh my goodness.
That's our currency, sucker.
Because you can't even get. That's not even the going rate on Fiverr.
I know.
That's so crazy.
Fiverr, it was too expensive. I'm like, hey, buddy. Here's my thing. Do you like this house? That's great, because you should help mommy pay for it, because we're a single income family. So like, I'm not joking around here. Like, we got to make sure that we're surviving.
Yeah, absolutely. So, on this podcast, one of the things I like to do, because we're focused on helping people grow and grow their small business, I'd like to ask a couple questions. And the first one is, what type of software would you recommend that is game-changing tool or software for business owners to look at that's not industry specific to you?
Canva.
Ooh, yeah, you love that?
I am obsessed with Canva. It is always open, always ready to go. I love it.
Yeah, I've used Canva a lot. We use Canva for a lot of stuff on the podcast and in my business, social media graphics, things like that, event graphics, things like that. So
it's got templates. It's so easy. By the way, I did have to fire my mom from Canva as well, just FYI. But
your mom's resume is not shaking up to look very good at the moment.
No, but you know what? She's handling my government affairs. She's probably on the phone with them right now, working out my SAM registration. And then, like I said, QA. So bless her.
All right, so check out Canva. We'll make sure we leave a link in the show notes to that for everybody. Next question. Best business books you would recommend to people to read?
Well, okay, so I'm going to be biased on this one because of my background in leadership development, right? And so I think that it's all about leading people. Every business is a people business. Of course, again, bias. I really enjoy Emotional Agility by Susan David.
Okay.
Oh my God. I think David. Oh my God, how embarrassing.
Well,
Anyway, I like that book
yeah.
because it's about how you manage your own stuff. Because as an entrepreneur, you've got your own internal dialogue and noise and distortions. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, there are over 150 distortions of how we manipulate what we see and interpret through our own filter, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so we're constantly rejiggering what we see without knowing it. So having that insight into how do I respond when I'm stressed? Is what I'm seeing real? Are my thoughts helpful? I think having that ability to manage that, because this is a stressful job. This is not just, rolling out of bed and like doing whatever you feel like and the money just happens. Like it's a roller coaster. Matt, you're muted or I'm unable to hear you. This is going really well.
Is that better?
There, yeah, that's great.
I somehow inadvertently muted myself.
I was gonna say, did I
which for the
destroy
listeners
mine?
might be a good thing. What I was going to say is, when you said roller coaster, it brought me back to my days growing up in Hershey and going to Hershey Park all the time. And you're right, it's the ups and downs, the ups and downs, the ups and downs of business. And I think one of the things I always try to do in small business ownership and leadership of my team was sort of level out those ups and downs, try and get things as close to a plateau and a slow uptick as possible versus this high and low. And when I had a web design agency years ago, we would sell these big jobs and then we'd have to work the job and then we'd sell these big jobs and we're constantly chasing these big jobs to feed the payroll, and it just wasn't working. Eventually we got into the recurring revenue business and we started doing a lot more of that, and that just stabilized everything. And that's one of the things I talk about in my book too, is that we tend to not take on clients that we know are going to be a problem if we can get to a predictable amount of recurring revenue every single month, because we're willing to take the risk of pushing away a client if we know we have our bills paid.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's that simple, right?
Yeah.
And so this roller coaster covers us emotionally, it covers it financially, it's in every aspect of our business, and I think that's a big component of it. So
But you hit on something too, which I think is incredibly important, is to understand your why. If you started a business because you thought you'd have more freedom, more money, what was your third one?
more money, more time, and more freedom.
Okay. And now you're realizing X number of days, weeks, months in that that's not really happening. I think understanding your why is incredibly important for identifying what's important for you, because what you just said is I'm turning away clients that don't bring me joy, right? Because I'm not just solving for the most money in my bank account.
Right.
I'm solving for a sustainable lifestyle that's going to keep us moving forward.
Right. Do I want a lifestyle business or do I want something to chase the money side?
Exactly.
In the book, I talk about the definition of joy, and it's going to be different for everybody. And that is, in a lot of ways, your why. Like, what is what are you looking for in a business? And I don't think we really take the time to really know and understand that when we start a business. Because we're the technician, we're doing the thing, right? And Michael Gerber talks about working on the business, not in the business, and not being the technician as much. And the more of that we do, the better off we're going to be at the end of the day.
Absolutely. So it's about, what we teach in our class is about values and goals, right? I got the why, and now I got to figure out the where. And so, how do I know that I'm making progress toward that where? What's my destination or destinations, or at least pit stops along the way? And that why is that fuel that moves us forward. So I think knowing that, like you said, you're using that as your guiding light, but being self-aware of it is incredibly important as well.
Oh yeah, and it doesn't It comes with a lot of work. Like, and that's what you got to be okay with, is doing the work to get to the point of what's important to you. And that brings us full circle, what you said earlier, which is, I'm not going to go back to the way I ran the business back in 2016 or whatever. That wasn't working for me. I'm going to do it this way now. And it's better off. So if people want to dig into that, know a little bit more about you and do some networking, have, an understanding of what you're all about, how do they reach out to you and where can they find you, Allessandria?
Well, my website's verdantconsulting.net, or you can just Google us. We're the #1 search. Yay. Verdant Consulting. And then Allessandria at verdantconsulting.net, which I know is hard to pronounce or spell. So you can also just do info at verdantconsulting.net. And then I use the hashtag #B_Verdant. I have my Be Verdant podcast. I'm on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. I am not.
All right. You're what?
I am not on TikTok because I am too old.
All right. Well, we're going to list all those links in the show notes, so make sure you check that out. And if you're listening on your favorite podcast app, we'd love for you to subscribe and make sure you get notified of all the future episodes. And speaking of subscribing, when you're on YouTube, smash that subscribe button and hit the notification bell so that you get every single notification every time our videos come up on the channel. Until next time, don't forget to live happy, smile a lot, and high five everyone around you.
I'm waking up this morning, gonna grab myself a smile.
Thank you for listening to the Mass Business Podcast, where we focus on growing a small business and understanding networking and referrals. Don't forget to like on your favorite platform and share out this podcast. This show has been produced by Heather Grant, music by Celtic Kelly, all rights reserved. I'm your host, professional speaker, author, and word-of-mouth referral consultant, Matt Ward. Don't forget to live happy, smile a lot, and high five everyone around you.
Feeling all right.